Hi, so my name is Stefan Rollnick and I'm from Epigram Comment, and here with me is Liam, also from Epigram Comment, and we're very lucky to have Chuka Umunna MP from the Labour Party, who's just come to do a talk to some of Bristol Labour students and other students as well.
Yeah, there was a mix.
On the EU, so we've just got about 5 minutes with you now, so we've each got a serious question we'd like to ask you.
We'll end on something a bit more light-hearted.
Which we'll keep secret.
Okay.
So you picked up on it briefly in your talk that I've realised over the last few weeks that there's been a lot of demand from the public, or so-called demand from the public, to have the facts and the figures put in front of them. And I think what we've seen is actually that's polarised it a lot more. And you touched upon it briefly in your talk, that we almost have to bring it back to values. So I wanted to ask you, what would you say you see as the values of the In campaign? And what values would you try and promote or encourage us to promote if we were to promote the In campaign?
Well, look, I've got a big view of our country. I think we are a great country. I think we punch above our weight in the world, given that, relatively speaking, in population terms, we're not as big as, you know, India, the biggest democracy in the world. We're much smaller than India. But people respect Britain. You know, they like to buy our goods because they think it's quality, it's decent, it complies with certain standards, but they like what we stand for as a country that is the home, the mother of democracy, some would say, but also has respect for human rights and wants to build a fairer, more equal world. Now, my question is, for people approaching this referendum, is how best can we do that in the modern world where there's other players on the stage in a way that there wasn't before? How best can we do that? And my view is there's a lot we can do on our own. We don't need the help of others to do that, but increasingly there are things which are cross-border in their nature, whether it's climate change, which knows no borders, the global terror threat, which knows no borders, or the challenge of making sure that big, large multinational companies play fair, pay their taxes, etc. I don't see how else we can deal with those issues other than on a cross-border basis with other countries that share our values, share our respect for human rights, share our desire to create a better and fairer world. So if you have a big vision and you're ambitious for our country, I think ambition is very much at the heart of the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign, then there's only one way to vote.
Well, a lot of people on the left will look at the EU, they'll see the way that Germany handled Greece last summer, they'll look at TTIP, and they'll see it as an organisation which facilitates the interests of capital at the expense of democracy. What do you say to those people?
Well, the ones who often make this argument around democracy, take Michael Gove or Boris Johnson for example, they set themselves up as the Pied Pipers of democracy when it comes to Europe, but have absolutely nothing to say about the fact that they are part of a government which was elected with the support of less than 25% of the electorate in the UK. So I don't really buy this concern for democracy that they claim to have. Now, I am concerned for democracy, but look at the way the European Union works. Things are not imposed by the European Commission. Elected heads of government on the European Council and a European Parliament, which has a much better voting system, a proportional voting system than ours, decide on the laws and regulations. So I think it's easy to, you know, kind of take shots at the EU for being undemocratic, but actually, in some respects, with its voting system, it is more democratic than we are. Now, is that to say there isn't a democratic deficit? No, there is. Do we need to make it less remote and more responsive to people? Yes, we should, but the same applies to our government and the way we do things here at home. And if you take the Greek situation, which was a particular situation, let's not forget, Greece got into the position that it did because it had been mismanaged by governments of different political persuasions for decades. That wasn't the fault of the Germans or the European Union. The fault for that lay with incompetence at the heart of the Greek government. So, now, did I agree with the demands that would be made by the Germans for extreme austerity? No. But the idea that Angela Merkel is the pin-up for the European Union, well, I think our socialist colleagues in France will have something to say about that. Our social democratic colleagues in Sweden would have something to say about that. Our colleagues around Europe of the left who are in government would have something to say about that.
Just a quick question on the current state of the Labour Party. There's been a lot of talk recently about anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic people who've recently been admitted into the party. Do you think this is a recent problem, one which affects the left more broadly, or how should we go about challenging those people? How is this a problem which can be solved?
Well, I think that on fringes of the left for some time there have been strains of anti-Semitism. There's no point denying it. There has been, and a legitimate concern for the actions of the Israeli government too often has drifted into that, and it shouldn't do. Now, that shouldn't preclude people being critical of the Labour government, of the Israeli government, and many of our Israeli Labour colleagues are very critical of their government, but we should have an absolute zero tolerance approach towards any form of prejudice, whether it's anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, or any other prejudice, and when we see it, we should root it out and ensure that it isn't in our party.
Cool. Well, we're conscious of the fact that you're very pushed for time, so we really appreciate you coming to talk to us. So just as a final thought, we know you've got a history in music, and a lot of people that I know and I spoke to when I told them that you were coming to talk, one of the first things they said was they read an article about you and your history with garage music.
Yes.
Yes, and that's that. We can confirm that.
I can confirm that I used to be a garage DJ.
So what are you listening to at the moment? Are you still into the UK garage scene? Have you moved on to anything else?
Well, I'm still actually I have agreed for my sins to do a mix show a guest mix show on the online station My Soul, which plays garage, house, jazz, soul, hip hop, the whole lot. But I'm going to set up an online thing to raise money. So I'll do a sponsored thing, and I'm going to raise money for a charity in my constituency in Streatham. But yeah, I love my music. I love my music. And what am I listening to at the moment? Oh my gosh, everything. It's quite eclectic at the moment. I quite liking George Ezra. Which is slightly off the beaten track for me, but he performed in my constituency last year, and so I went to go and see him, and he was great. But I love my music. It keeps me sane.
Yeah.
It keeps me sane.
Well, thanks for coming to talk to us.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Good to be on your show. Is that what I say?